Welcome to the Daily Technology Pulse podcast by Daily Computers, your expert technology partners for public and private sector organizations throughout Maryland and Virginia. This episode is brought to you by JAR Systems, charging the future by keeping devices active with less work to empower people and organizations nationwide. And now, here's your host, Rick from Daily.
Joining us today on the Technology Pulse podcast, we have Abe Wiley. Abe is the Director of Channel Sales and Partner Alliances for JAR Systems. Abe, welcome to the Technology Pulse.
Rick, thanks for having me here today.
We are thrilled to have you. And I'll tell you what, this is a topic that I'm really anxious to talk about because I think everybody in the world of devices, when you're talking about power, and you talk about the power that devices hold, but you also need to talk about the power that devices need. And particularly today with devices getting smarter and everything else that's going on out there in the world of education, in the world of personal use, state and local government, pretty much anybody who has a device. I mean, you just have to realize that the more we're asking these devices to do, the more power you really need to get them up and running and keep them up and running. But before we do that, before I get too far ahead of myself, which I've already done, Abe, I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and JAR Systems, how long you've been there, and what you do.
Yeah, Rick, thank you very much. I've been with JAR a little over a year now. Prior to that, I spent about 10 years with Lenovo, and 5 of those years specifically in the public sector space. So I'm very familiar with the challenges that our K-12 customers face when it comes to charging and managing devices. And for those of you who are not familiar with JAR Systems is the channel-focused leader in USB-C-based charging technology for K-12 and beyond. And our mission is really to help schools charge and manage devices efficiently and improve the educational experience for both our teachers and students every single day. As you mentioned, our entire educational system is now built around these devices in the classroom. So this challenge is more important than ever. So JAR Systems has been around for 20 years now and has been focused on charging educational devices for all 20 of those years. Not only that, but JAR Systems pioneered USB-C power delivery with our QuickSense USB-C charging technology back in 2019. So not only have we been doing USB-C based power delivery longer than our competition, but we do it better. We design and engineer our QuickSense USB-C charging technology in-house. So that means that we can design unique solutions for the K-12 market that our competition simply can't.
And we appreciate that overview. And now we're going to start talking about these solutions because I'm telling you, think back to the pandemic days. And it's hard to believe we're going on, 4 years since all that craziness started. K-12s did not have the infrastructure in place. I would say most of them did not to handle, a virtual learning environment. Then they had to hurry up and they had to scramble, and they got a whole bunch of devices that they had to give out to everybody, and everybody had to use them because you wanted to make sure that you were, everybody had the same equipment. Everybody was on an equal playing field. You were able to manage everything. So now here we are 4 years later, and now all these school systems have these devices and they're utilizing them very well because now they're starting to say, okay, it's not just virtual, it's also hybrid. We can also make sure that these devices are being used in the classroom, but bringing those devices to the classroom ends up with this whole other type of challenge, which is again, keeping them powered up, right? Is this something that you're hearing as a common issue? How do we supply power to all these devices without having 18, 20, 24 power outlets strewn throughout a classroom?
Yeah, absolutely, Rick. I lived through that experience from a couple perspectives during the pandemic. First of all, I was selling education devices for Lenovo. And then at the same time, I had a 7th grader and a 3rd grader who came home one day and didn't go back into the classroom for a year and a half, right? During that time period, the government pumped something like $7 or $8 billion into K-12 school districts to purchase devices. And most districts purchased those devices in a panic. Some districts even placed multiple orders to make sure that they would get devices, etc. And basically, none of them thought about how are we going to charge and manage these devices if and when they come back to the classroom. Their main concern was just getting enough devices to make sure they could educate their students. In fact, we come across some districts that have more devices than students now. But there's a whole set of challenges that our K-12 customers face when charging devices, and most of those I was not really aware of until I started working for JAR. So I'm going to talk through a few of those. First of all, there's the pain point around a traditional AC-based charging cart. Now, this is basically a sheet metal box on wheels with 30 or 32 AC adapters stuffed inside. The initial wiring of those carts is time consuming. Those AC adapters can break or get lost or be stolen, which requires a tech to come out and rewire them multiple times during a school year. And then by the end of the year, those charging carts are a mess, and a tech really kind of has to rewire or clean them up again over the summer. That's a lot of work, a lot of time, and essentially a lot of money that's wasted for a very subpar solution. But most of our K-12 customers don't even know there's a better solution out there. So they just keep buying what they know, which is a traditional AC charging cart. Now, we talked about the number of devices that are in the classroom now and how nearly every school district is one-to-one. So again, there's a ton of devices out there, and the schools are just now trying to figure out how are we going to charge and manage those. And they're being forced into figuring that out because devices are now returning to the classroom. What we are seeing from a lot of our K-12 customers is that devices are returning and often in a hybrid fashion. So for example, the damage and loss rate on EDU devices in the lower grade levels is a lot higher than it is in high school. So a lot of schools are making the decision for those devices to return to the classroom in, say, K through 4. And then the devices still go home at night with the students in 5 through 12. So this presents two very different charging challenges that require two very different solutions. So at JAR, we call these a passive charging challenge and an active charging challenge. And we'll go into that a little bit deeper later on. Another challenge that I didn't even think of before I joined JAR was about the power infrastructure in the school buildings themselves. A lot of these school buildings are really old, and the power infrastructure in the classrooms can't even be updated, even if they have the budget. It's just simply not possible to run more outlets and more power to the classrooms. So how do you solve that challenge, right? Another challenge that I learned about since joining JAR is around mandatory state testing. Districts are required, to do this mandatory state testing every year, and really how it works is students usually come to a testing room with their notebook. They are monitored while they're taking the test, and after they complete the test, they go back to the classroom, right? So all these devices come to a testing space. And how do you keep all those devices powered up while they're taking the test? If that student's device loses connectivity, either from, losing internet connectivity or from the battery dying, that's an event that has to be logged by the school. Sometimes the student has to come back and complete the test at a later time, and it's really just kind of a logistical nightmare. So how can we eliminate that problem for our K-12 customers as well? And we'll talk about a solution for that again a little bit later on.
Yeah, and you've mentioned quite a few things that, again, school systems and students and even parents didn't really think about. I have two students. I have a middle schooler and a high schooler. And it really was one of those things where, they're constantly getting the emails, make sure your devices are charged before you come to school. And that's all well and good. And you think, okay, that's no problem. We'll charge them up overnight. But we both know technology sometimes has a mind of its own. Or you plug the charger into the device and you're not paying attention. You don't see the little blue light that shows that it's charging. And even though it's plugged in and I could feel that it's plugged in, I have to unplug it and then plug it back in, because there have been plenty of times where I get the email, your student came to school without the device being charged. My kids are trained these days. Charge your device the second you get home. It doesn't even come out of their backpack. I don't send their chargers into school with them. And there's a reason I don't. There's nowhere for them to plug it in. Just like you said, I mean, particularly with some of these school buildings and the electrical infrastructure, you can't just run an extension cord from a wall. I mean, it's a tripping hazard. You can't just run like 10 power strips off of
Yep.
one electrical outlet, because that's just bound to go wrong somewhere, and probably go wrong very badly. So you've got a lot of different challenges. And again, these school systems weren't thinking ahead when these devices came back. And now, particularly those, like you said, that want to use them inside the classroom or inside the testing center. You've got to have chargers around. You got to have a way to charge it, because you just never know. You never know. The best laid plans are never going to work out, and it becomes a real problem. So I'm glad that JAR has their finger on the pulse of this sort of thing, because speaking as a parent, to students who bring their devices home all the time, we want to make sure that there's a backup. And I've done my best to give them a backup. You've got those little charging blocks that you could send with them that they could plug in, and that's probably going to run it for maybe about 45 minutes, because it's not meant to charge much more than a mobile phone. But at the same time, that's not something that every parent has the ability to get, that every parent has the ability to provide. And it's not something that I know the schools don't want to buy 15,000, 40,000, a million charging blocks, because again, you're just talking about more things that eventually need charged, right? So JAR is obviously taking this at the forefront. Is that what really puts you above the competition, or are there other things that really differentiate you within this space?
Well, you touched on a number of really important things there. First of all, you talked about safety. We go into classrooms, and some of the things we see in classrooms these days with extension cords and power strips are just unsafe. They're unsafe for the students and the teachers. So, that's definitely something we also think about every day when we're out there talking to customers. And you talked about AC adapters and how, you don't send the AC adapter back to school. And that's a great point too, because when we talked about the pain points around traditional AC carts, right? Now, what schools typically do is the AC adapter that comes with the device when they buy that Chromebook. If they put that in the cart, now there's not an AC adapter for the student to have at home. So they end up having to buy an additional AC adapter for every single device they purchase. And all those AC adapters are just going to end up in a landfill someday. I mean, they're just going to be e-waste, right? So then there's that to think about. And then the other thing that I didn't mention and I want to talk about real briefly is about our teachers, right? What we think about, one other thing that JAR thinks about all the time is our teachers. As you know, teaching is it's a labor of love, right? I mean, teachers love to teach, and
Right.
unfortunately, there's far too many teachers leaving the industry and left during the pandemic because of the stress and strain that they were under. They're not paid enough. All those things that we all know about our teachers, and our teachers don't want to be helping students solve their charging challenges at the beginning of every class. They don't want to be tech support. They're not IT. They want to be teaching. So if there's a solution that we can bring to market that's going to eliminate this problem altogether and just work and allow our teachers to spend more time teaching, that's something we're extremely passionate about. So I just wanted to talk about that really quick before we move on. So in terms of what makes JAR systems different, I mentioned it in my intro briefly, but I'm going to double down on it, which is our QuickSense USB-C charging technology. So again, this is something we pioneered in 2019. We're 5.5 years into developing this technology in-house. It's what allows us to bring solutions to the market that require no wiring. There's no wiring involved in any of our products at all. Our QuickSense USB-C charging modules have integrated cable management. The cable's attached from the front. There's a cable retention mechanism. The cables are coiled, so as the device gets pulled out, it reduces the stress on the USB-C port on the device itself, which is going to lead to less breakage and less repairs. Our QuickSense USB-C charging technology also does intelligent load balancing. So as you're putting devices in and taking devices out of the charging solution, it is automatically detecting the battery level of each device and delivering the most power to the devices that need it to make sure that you're charging them as quickly and efficiently as possible. We've also redesigned our QuickSense power delivery modules specifically for EDU devices. Now, we still have some that deliver 65 watts for quick charge, but think about this. Our K-12 customers are trying to keep EDU devices for 4, 5, I've even heard 6 years, which is, I don't even know how they do it. All right. Now, the most expensive component inside that education device is most likely the battery. So if you quick charge a battery over and over and over again, it depletes the overall lifetime of that battery, right? The lifespan of that battery, which is not a good thing for our K-12 districts because they don't have the budget to go replace a bunch of batteries. So what we did is redesigned our power delivery technology to only deliver the power needed for an EDU device to extend the overall lifespan of the device itself. No one else does that. And then our QuickSense USB-C power delivery modules, they are incredibly reliable. Our breakage rate is extremely low. But if something does go wrong, servicing our carts, our charging solutions is incredibly easy. You submit a ticket. We send you a new module. I think there's 4 screws that you have to take out and put back in, and you fixed it. You send the old module back. It could not be easier, again, because there's no wiring involved whatsoever in our solutions. So in terms of what makes us different, it's QuickSense USB-C charging technology.
And that is absolutely fascinating to me because, first of all, I love the 4 screws thing because even those of us who think that we are handy, which I do not, I could not screw up 4 screws. I'm pretty sure that I can do that. And just like you said, most of the time this is going to be happening in the classroom because school systems these days, I mean, everybody's wearing multiple hats. So you've got the IT help desk person who's also, they're not just in one school building, they're in 8 school buildings and they're going around and they get one day in each school building over a course of 4 or 5 days or 2 days, whatever. And so it's just, they're constantly rotating. So, you've got to be able to handle these things quickly. So being able to service that so quickly without needing an electrical engineering background, IT professional certification. Again, 4 screws, I'm pretty sure even I can do that. But then that load balancing is what really gets me because we don't realize this, I think, a lot of times. When we're looking at devices, we are so used to faster, better. I need it now. We're in the information age where it's really funny to stop and think about what the internet used to be versus what it is today. And particularly when I hear my kids complain about lag time on one of their massive games that they're playing. And I'm like, look, I came from the day where if you wanted to download a picture on the internet, you started at midnight and you let it roll. And hopefully by the time you got up the next morning, the picture was there because it was coming through line by line. And and so, they don't realize any of that. But, we are taught that. We are taught that with our devices. We want it immediately now. But that's not how it works well for charging these things. Like you said, the more you fast charge it'd be like jump starting your vehicle every morning instead of having an alternator. You're eventually going to blow your battery up. And we don't think about that when it comes to these devices, that these batteries just are not meant to be charged like that. And then if you kill all these batteries, think about the ecological waste for taking batteries that are just toast and then having to, throw them in a landfill. And what are we doing?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the load balancing kind of functionality that's built into the QuickSense USB-C technology is also what allows us to solve that challenge where older schools don't have enough outlets, right? So think about it. If you want to charge 32 devices from a single outlet, I mean, you're going to blow that breaker if you plug in, multiple power strips and multiple AC adapters, et cetera. So what our QuickSense technology does is, again, it does that load balancing. So it is detecting which batteries need the power the most, deliver that, and the rest are receiving like a trickle charge, right? It's slowly charging. And that allows us to essentially charge 32 devices from a single power cord plugged into a single outlet. It's what allows us to solve that challenge of not enough power infrastructure in the classroom. So that's a great call out, Rick.
And that's what I'm talking about. I know you said you see it, and it makes me shudder to think about it because I have also gone into the school where I'm seeing the extension cords taped down, and you're seeing one extension cord with 3 power strips plugged into it. I know for a fact that's not safe. I'm not an electrician, and I know for a fact that that's not safe. I mean, we always had that, that warning around the holiday time, don't plug too many things into one outlet, and how badly that was going to end for you. And it's still true to this day. We're making things more energy efficient, which is great. It's great that our light bulbs these days only take 15 watts instead of 100 watts, to actually produce the light. But that's not how it works in the power world. Now, I'm going to jump back to something that you said earlier because you said we were going to talk about it later, and I think this is the perfect time to do it. You talked about passive versus active charging. I'm really curious to know what that means.
Yeah, no, great. I do want to come back and double down on this. And this is kind of some terminology that we here at JAR have coined to really help customers themselves differentiate between the two different challenges they're facing, right? So again, prior to the pandemic, most devices stayed in the classroom. They stayed in the classroom overnight. They didn't go home with students. Most schools were not one-to-one schools, one device to each student. Again, as we said, during the pandemic, the government pumped tons of money in, and all of a sudden, nearly every school district out there is now one-to-one. Now, devices are starting to come back to the classroom. So that presents two different challenges. So if the devices come back to the classroom and then stay in the classroom overnight, we call that a passive charging challenge. How are the devices being charged when they are not being used? So they're, again, a passive charging challenge. Now, some schools are actually doing this in a hybrid fashion. Again, lower grade levels are staying in the classroom. Higher grade levels, they still go home at night. Or maybe all the devices go home at night. It's a take-home district, right? This is what we call an active charging challenge. Now, that device can come back to the classroom in the morning and have a low battery or completely dead battery, or maybe the student forgot their device altogether, right? How do you solve that challenge? So we have different solutions to solve each of these challenges, and I'd love to talk you through a few of them.
Now, I would love to learn more about these solutions, and particularly just to let folks out there know that there are different options. You have different ways to solve these problems.
Yeah, so we have a ton of solutions at JAR Systems, way too many to cover today. So I'm going to be a little bit selective on what I talk about, but first we'll start with passive charging solutions. These are typically what are referred to as carts or Chrome carts or what have you, right? So we have our Elevate EDU cart. So the Elevate EDU is a 32 device cart. It has doors, so it includes physical security as well, if that's necessary. Two 16-port QuickSense USB-C power delivery modules. And again, the EDU in the name indicates that the QuickSense power delivery module in that solution is designed specifically for the power requirements of an EDU device. So you know that you're going to be getting a solution that's going to extend the overall lifespan of that device. Now, not all schools require physical security, right? Maybe the classrooms themselves are locked at night, so they don't also need to lock the cart. We have a different solution, an open solution called the Elevate Air EDU. Again, designed specifically for the power requirements of an education device, but it's an open design. There's no doors on it. Multiple students can grab devices out of it at the same time. It's actually a little bit more compact, lower to the ground, so it's even better for smaller students in the lower grade levels. And that solution is very popular. That is our only solution in our portfolio that requires assembly. It doesn't need to be wired. Think of it more like a piece of IKEA furniture, but not as complex, right? It's pretty easy to assemble. And we do that because it's flat packed and it lowers the cost. It's a lower cost solution than a traditional cart. But it's very popular in K through 4, K through 6, where physical security is not a requirement. Now, some schools have devices over 14 inches. So we have a larger cart called the Elevate Max. It's deeper and wider, supports 36 devices. Our marketing material will say it supports up to 15 inch, but I like to say 16 is the new 15. So it will support most 16-inch devices. And that solution does deliver 65 watts. So it's also a great solution for STEM labs. So maybe the school district has some lower end mobile workstations that they use for CAD or game development, graphic design type classes. The Elevate Max is perfect for those types of devices. And in terms of active charge or active charging solutions, our most popular are our Adapt series. It's a smaller chassis that's lockable. There's a 4-port version, 6-port, and 12-port. The 6 and 12 are probably the most popular. The 6-port version, or the Adapt 6, you can actually fit 14-inch devices in as well. So a lot of schools take that and they put one in each classroom with 4 of our power banks and 2 loaner laptops. So if a student comes to class in the morning and their battery's dead, they grab one of our power banks, plug it in, and they can boot up their laptop and start learning while the device is charging without having to ask anyone how to fix the problem, right? Or if they forget their Chromebook altogether, they grab one of the loaners out of the Adapt and they log in and they're learning. Again, we've eliminated disruptions to the educational environment. The Adapt 12 is a 12-port version. You can put 12 power banks in it, so the maximum density of power banks in the smallest possible space, but you can no longer put 14-inch devices in there that actually a lot of schools are using for that mandatory state testing challenge. They put a few Adapt 12s filled with power banks in the testing rooms, and as students, their battery starts getting low, they raise their hand, a proctor comes over, gives them a power bank, ensures that the test is not disrupted. Then when they're done, they put the power bank right back in the Adapt, and it's charged for the next student. As I mentioned earlier, we do sell our own power banks. These are really beefy power banks. They're 20,000 milliamps and 65 watts. So these power banks deliver what we call an active charge. That means the device is being charged while it's being used. So if the device is completely dead and you plug in one of our power banks, the student can turn it on and start learning and use their laptop for the whole class. And when they unplug that power bank, they have more power in the battery of their device than when they started. And they can go to the next classroom and grab another power bank if they need it. So again, it's an active charge. The device is being charged while it's being used. These power banks are also what we like to call school bus yellow. We used to sell black power banks and they disappeared a lot. And once we changed them to a bright school bus yellow, the loss rate went down significantly. So our K-12 customers love that. And our power banks also have a unique serial number and barcode on each power bank. So that way, some schools actually take these and put them in a different chassis that we have and turn it into a library checkout solution. So they can have 16 power banks in a library inside a charging chassis, and then a student can check a power bank out from the library just like they would a book. And obviously, they can asset tag them with their own asset tag if they want, but again, there's a serial number and a barcode already on the power banks for them as well. So there's a lot of different ways you can charge or solve that active charging challenge. And again, we just touched on a few of our solutions, but those are the most popular.
No, and that's fantastic. And, again, knowing the difference between what you need for passive charging versus active charging, I think, again, this is a lot of things that school systems don't think about. IT focused people will think about this all day long, but the majority of people who work within the school system are not IT people. And again, we're always thinking active, active, active. You're going to give me power, give it now, and you don't realize you're doing yourself a disservice. So I love the fact that you are really taking care of that by helping them understand those differences. Now, the one thing I want to touch upon before we wrap things up is carts, because I do know that DALY particularly, we have done a lot of these carts in the past. We've sold a lot of these things, and they litter our sales floor during the summer before they get deployed out. It's amazing, we can't even move. But you start to think about these. So school systems have invested in these, I hate to use the word antiquated, but just for this purpose, they're using these carts that are not as efficient as the carts that you would have for JAR that you've been talking about. I mean, are they stuck with these things? Do they have to put them out by the side of the road saying free to good home? Do they have to go back to their state legislature and say, oops, we know we asked you for these last year, but now we really want these because we want to go from, we want to keep moving forward. I mean, is there anything that these school systems can do with these older type carts, other than, again, finding the closest recycling bin and and putting it in there and hoping you get a little bit for the metal that it's made of?
Yeah, Rick, that's a great question. We think about sustainability here at JAR as well. And as I said earlier, we're always listening to our customers. And we actually had a customer come to us with just that request about a year and a half ago. And that led to a new series of products that we released this year that we call our retrofit kits. So basically, we did some research and found 5 of the most popular carts, AC carts from our competitors out there in the market. A lot of that's all public information out there. And what we did is a little bit of work to figure out, all right, which of these carts could we retrofit with our QuickSense USB-C power delivery modules? And we identified 5. So there are 5 very specific models from our competition. We developed these kits. There are a few brackets. It takes about 30 minutes per cart to upgrade. But basically, you get to install our QuickSense USB-C intelligent charging technology, the modules into the cart with a couple of brackets. It also includes our cable management system along with the coiled USB-C cables, everything you need, right? And you essentially upgrade that existing antiquated AC charging cart to a modern load balancing, efficient charging solution with cable management. And this allows these districts who have invested in these fleets of carts to upgrade the technology at a lower price point and also eliminate waste, right? The sheet metal is not going to end up in a landfill, or maybe they get pennies on the dollar from a recycler or what have you. There's nothing wrong with the sheet metal box, really. They're fine. Mm-hmm. But the AC adapters and the experience that they provide to the teachers and students just isn't great. We listened to a specific customer who asked for that, and we came up with the solution based on that request. So it's just another way or an example of how JAR Systems is constantly trying to figure out how can we eliminate this problem from the classroom and deliver a better educational experience for our students.
No, and that's fantastic. And again, sustainability is really something that DALY prides itself upon. So working with a partner that has that same sustainability mindset, we definitely appreciate that. So I got to say, Abe, we're getting to that magic time where we want to start wrapping things up. I know you said JAR has a ton of stuff that we're not able to cover, and all of that is great, but is there anything anything else you wanted to mention before we sign off today?
Yeah, Rick, I'm so glad you asked, because we did just announce a new product last month that we are incredibly excited about. I firmly believe there's nothing else like it out there in the market right now. So the product I'm referring to is our brand new Legion Power Pro esports cart. This is a cart designed specifically for the power requirements of mobile gaming devices. It's Legion branded, and for your listeners who are not aware, Legion is Lenovo's gaming brand. So it's co-branded with Lenovo Legion. And the only reason we were able to bring this product to market, again, is because we design and engineer our power delivery technology in-house. So essentially what we had to do is redesign our power delivery modules to deliver 850 total watts to 12 devices. And then we also redesigned the inside of the cart with horizontal ventilated trays, with fans. There's LED light bars, everything that you'd want to see from an esports solution, right? But again, it's utilizing our intelligent QuickSense USB-C charging technology to charge those devices as fast as possible. It's even got some, areas specifically designed to hang and store headsets and mice and things like that. One of the things that I learned about esports in K-12 since joining JAR is that, it makes sense now that I know it, but I never thought of it, which is most districts, first of all, they're lucky if they even have the budget for an esports program. And if they do have an esports program, in the K-12 space, they're usually sharing those devices amongst multiple schools. Every school doesn't have their own esports lab or set of mobile gaming laptops. It's usually a small set of laptops that's shared among 6, 7, 10 schools, something like that. And someone working for the school system has to cart them around from one school to another so that the teams can practice and compete and do whatever. So I talked to this one tech from a district, I think from Louisiana, and he explained this to me. And it was something I never really thought of before. Wow, like the logistical challenge of sharing mobile gaming devices amongst multiple schools. And he was talking about how he had big plastic tubs and he loaded stuff in and he had like a dolly and I was just like, wow, that sounds like a nightmare.
Really?
So that wasn't specifically what kind of kickstarted the development of this product, but it kind of reinforced what we were already thinking, which is there's got to be a better solution out there. So we have just announced this product. It's really cool looking. There's nothing else out there on the market like it. Availability is going to be in January of 2025. MSRP is about $3,500. Obviously, you'll get your final pricing from your favorite reseller, DALY. So again, thank you, Rick, for letting me talk about an exciting new product that we just launched. But it's going to be an attention grabber, that's for sure. Anyone who sees it asks what it is and how they can get one.
Wow, that is fantastic. And we are thrilled that you shared that news here on the Technology Pulse because, again, this is something I know esports has really grown because I think a lot of schools are now realizing it's not just kids playing around. It's giving them an opportunity for competition. You also have additional learning opportunities with the gamification and again, the skills that you're learning in gaming. I'm amazed by my two kids and all the games that they play, but they really are building, whether it's science or technology or engineering or even math skills. It's amazing. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the program today. And I'm telling you, you've taught me so much, which I'm really appreciative of. I think anybody who's listening is probably going to have a lot better, understanding of just exactly, it's not just what JAR does, but how JAR makes a big difference. So thank you for sharing all that information. And we look forward to having you back because I'm sure there's going to be more that we're going to want to talk about down the line.
Well, Rick, I really appreciate the invitation to be here today. We're very passionate about this at JAR. I think, it probably comes through from the conversation we had here today. But we really just want to make sure that our teachers and students are focusing on the learning experience in the classroom. And we want to make all of these other challenges just go away. These challenges shouldn't exist. We have the technology to eliminate them from the classroom. And really what it just comes down to is making our shared customers, our K-12 customers out there aware that there is a better solution. So we appreciate the partnership with DALY. It's been a fantastic partnership so far, and I know that we can grow this partnership tremendously over the coming years. So again, Rick, thank you for the opportunity. And hey, I would love to come back and dig a little bit deeper into this at some point. So I'll hold you to that.
Definitely. I think we're going to think next time around, we're going to see how this esports cart is performing and talk a little bit about that. So that's fantastic. And again, we appreciate the partnership with JAR, and I appreciate you being on the Technology Pulse. Abe, thanks so much. You have yourself a great rest of the day.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the Daily Technology Pulse podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Before we sign off, we want to take a moment to remind you of some important legal considerations. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Daily Technology Pulse podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Daily Computers or its partners. The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of Daily Computers Inc. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us at www.daly.com. The Daily Technology Pulse podcast will be back with more exciting discussions on the latest in technology. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected.